Hello there from media student Jarita Hess. On a day like today with that bit of rainy, gloomy weather, it's almost instinct to want to cuddle up by the fire with a good book. Thankfully, today we're discussing just that. Joining me, senior psychology major Genna Echols, who's going to tell us all about her interest in literature and reading. Where would you say your interest began in books?
I would say that my interest began in junior high. You know how everybody has those levels of points that you need to reach in order to get a certain grade. Upon finishing that part of the class, my teacher told me that I was above average when it came to reading comprehension. So that really motivated me, and so I started reading more, and I realized that I really liked it.
How old were you when you started reading?
I can remember way back to reading Twilight in the 4th grade.
Well, I mean, Twilight, it's kind of a big book. Were you always that dedicated to reading from the start, or?
No, I don't know where that came from.
So you've read a lot of those big books since that time?
Most of the books that I read are 200 to 300 pages. I wouldn't say I read super large books, but I do like series. So 200 to 300 pages, 6 to 7 books, just depends on the series itself.
Okay, how long would you say it takes you on average to finish a book of that size?
A book of that size I can read in 5 to 6 hours.
Wow, okay, with no interruptions and everything?
Without interruptions, if I'm really into it. If I'm not that into it, it can take me a little bit longer to focus, and then it will take me some more time, obviously.
Would you say maybe you have an estimate on how many books you've read since you began reading? Just give shout out a random number.
I'd say 150 to 200 books.
Wow, yeah, that's nice. I mean, I used to read a lot in middle school, and then high school started and completely fell off. So you're doing a lot better than I am right now. What has been your favorite part of being an avid reader?
My favorite thing about reading is that every book that you read is different. It's told differently. It's told from a different tone and from a different perspective. So I really like being able to see things in different ways and learn and being able to just go into a different world for a little while.
Oh, okay. So on that note, would you say what's your favorite genre? Maybe fantasy or something like that?
I have found myself, especially in the past 4 or 5 years, definitely fantasy romance, more on the fantasy side. Growing up, I would read things like Diary of a Wimpy Kid and things like that. Just the smaller books. I read a bunch of different types of books. But they've always just been fictional stories that make you feel good.
Mm-hmm.
There was an author named Pierce Brown. He's a sci-fi fantasy writer. He was my favorite author, and then I met Sarah J. Maas. I didn't meet her, but I experienced her, and so she's kind of my favorite now. But it's always been things that aren't completely normal, but aren't super fictional either. I don't like the paranormal, too much of the paranormal stuff. Anything that's too far-fetched, I don't really like, but anything that seems relatively normal but has a twist on it, that's what I like.
So would you say these authors or these books have had positive or definitive impacts on your life?
They have definitely made me feel more involved in the world and just with other people. I've always found myself more able to connect emotionally through books than with people that I'm around physically. Mm-hmm. So it really helps me tune into my own emotions and perspectives of those around me. So.
Okay, that's cool though. It's nice to see that you're so dedicated, but now that I know that you are, I just have to ask. Do you have a favorite book or book series? And yes, there are wrong answers.
There are wrong answers. Okay. So when I was in junior high, right when I first developed this big passion, my favorite book series was the Warrior series by Aaron Hunter. I'm not sure if you're familiar.
Is those the Warrior Cats?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
I read every single one that our junior high library had, and I would read 2 or 3 books a weekend. I was that obsessed with them. But then it gravitated towards Pierce Brown. Mm-hmm. His Red Rising series, that was my favorite. And then Sarah J. Maas, I read the Throne of Glass series. That's the one that first introduced me to her.
I mean, all of those answers have made you a woman after my own heart. Love those books. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. Without you, I wouldn't have been able to make this video, write the script, or put this word onto page to get this content out there, hopefully to inspire readers of all generations.